Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Nick Zulovich, part of the team at Cherokee Media Group, and we welcome you to our session, Data Speaks with Inovatec Systems. Bob Metodiev and Brian Smith have a brand new list of the top 5 surprising trends in automotive lending and how they are shaping growth strategies for the modern lender. Before we get to our session with Bob and Brian, just a couple of quick housekeeping items for today's webinar. We are recording today's session and we'll make that recording available to you as soon as possible. So keep watch of your inbox for a message containing a link. You'll be in listen-only mode for our webinar today, but if you have any questions, please use the chat function here on the Zoom platform, and we'll get to those questions after the prepared presentation. So let's get right into it with Bob and Brian for today's session. Gentlemen, it's all yours.
Thanks, Nick. Bob Metodiev. I'm head of business development at Inovatec Systems. For those of you which had the chance to see the previous session we did on industry trends, it was more data specific. Today we'll talk a little bit more about trends from a technology perspective, obviously incorporating data, but specific to the latest on the technology side. And Brian, if you want to introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, hey everyone, Brian Smith, head of customer growth and strategic partnerships at Inovatec. So as Bob mentioned, we're going to jump into the 5 what we'll call newer trends, but there are some turning points from our last discussion that we'll push into these trends as well. So you'll see a nice progression from our last discussion in those. And we're actually going to talk about more relevant use cases in the industry. So how are they shaping the growth strategies of the lenders out there, both mainstream prime lenders all the way down to non-prime lenders. And I think we're going to kick off the session with the first trend, which is which subprime marketing techniques are capturing a full spectrum of borrowers. I'm actually going to let Bob kind of start us off on that one. So Bob, maybe I'll kick it to you.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Now, when I talk about some of those trends, I'll have primarily my US hat on. For the last 4 or 5 years, I've been managing alliances between data and technology companies in the automotive ecosystem. And Brian will bring some of the Canadian perspective as part of the discussion. So regarding the full spectrum, what's really interesting, what we've seen as an interesting trend is that subprime lenders have been more aggressive to come up with creative ways to approach clients, to find some of those underbanked consumers via social media, Facebook, and other means. But since this has been presented in a much easier format to the consumers, what we've seen is that it's actually attracted as many non-prime customers as well as prime. So, for example, I was approached last year through LinkedIn from one of the captives, and I was able to buy a vehicle through the social media platform as a way to create that initial lead. And another examples would be, for example, Canada Drive have a really good Facebook presence and ability to present interesting make and models, and especially in the COVID, where you have not that much inventory. There's a lot of people which, as they see some of those images and some of those rates, are open to click through some of them and potentially take advantage of this available inventory. Brian, do you want to add anything on your side from a Canadian perspective?
Yeah, I think what I'll do is, I think I mentioned I'll talk about some relevant real cases in the marketplace. And when Bob talks about Facebooks and the Instagrams of the world and all those media outlets and the type of generational buyer that comes through there, it really does do full spectrum. And we have even current customers at Inovatec that are taking advantage of that. So, and what I mean by that, if we just want to level set everybody, you have to have the right tech base or the right infrastructure to do it. So think of it as your ultimate power bar where you have limitless plugs, and never have to abandon your current strategies with current portals and indirect business, but you can open up direct or other avenues inside your lending. We have a couple of customers that just use that simple API connection. They connect to things like Bob, some of the examples Bob mentioned, where it does push those leads in. You have the tech stack or the tech base to optimize those leads, i.e. pull it in, hit the credit side. You can engage them from a human to human perspective if you want. But the idea of no need to abandon a certain current strategy and then layer on the fact that you can use those outlets. We have a customer today, Coast Capital is Savings is one of the largest credit unions in BC, or actually Canada for that matter. They've actually used their technology base or infrastructure to do just that. So they have their regular outlets for marketing, like Bob suggested a few of them. And then they have their website is just set up for a simple input as well. So, and all of it's plugged into that tech base. So they're now looking at different ways to take advantage of it and grow that particular piece. The two big things that have come out of it, and they're both major success stories, is one, that particular business is outpacing their indirect now. So quite a bit of a surprise to them. So they're looking at cultivating that a little bit more and looking at different ways to grow their member base. So current members taking on new products and new members coming in to take on their auto loans or other types of loans. And then, believe it or not, the portfolio performance of that direct business is much better and much stronger than the indirect side. So there's been two major success stories that have come out of that. And we have quite a few lenders that are looking in that direction and have decided to go down that direction and leverage those marketing strategies. And by the way, if we're doing a Q&A at the end of this, so if you want to do a deeper discussion, you can talk then, or we can actually set up something along the side of it. So I think if we advance the slide, I think it's still stuck on that first slide. Oh, there we go. So this was the slide for trend one. And I think we're going to head into a poll question. Nick, I think that's something you can handle for us. So folks, there's a poll question on screen. If you guys can take the time to fill it out, pretty simple stuff. Just want to get a handle on which social media outlets do you use for your consumer base today, if any.
That's interesting. Interesting split between LinkedIn and Facebook.
Yeah, that is, and I think it looks like folks are using quite a few different ones as well. So that's great. Mm-hmm. So the next one we wanted to get into, and we thank you for your feedback. And like I said, if you have any questions after the fact or want to engage us separately, you can. And maybe the next poll will give you a bit more of a heads up, because I think it kind of took people off guard there. But the next one is how customization through AI, so artificial intelligence, gets high customer ratings. And again, I'm going to throw it to Bob to start us off and go from there.
To advance screen.
Oh, bear with us, we're having
technical difficulties here. For some reason I can't move to the next slide. Brian, do you mind if you can share maybe on your side?
I can try.
Let me see.
Or you can open it and close it, Bob, but I'll bring it up on my side.
Oh, here you go. Here you
go. Okay, great.
You moved it to the next one. Sorry for that, everyone. Yeah, so as Brian mentioned, the second trend is on customization through AI and how that improve the customer rating and the customer experience. And here I want to give an example about use of AI on the back end. I'm sure that all of us are familiar how AI is used on the front end with lead gen and requests from consumers on inventory websites, as well as part of the early stage of the generation of leads. But on the back end, it's interesting. AI now, it becomes almost a norm to as you record some of those collection calls and customer calls, to be able to capture sentiments from a consumer perspective, if the consumer is angry, as well as how likely is that they can pay the outstanding balance, and use the AI obviously to improve the performance and the approach which you're taking with this particular consumers, but also to manage the queue on the back end, how you present the information, which clients you're going first to talk with to collect payments. Further example would be we partner at Inovatec with third party which do collection using social media and present the information in any different formats, but it's very transparent, and it's very different than the standard collection process. And as a result, they have some of the highest consumer reviews. Imagine a collection agency, which as a result, consumers are really happy with the experience. But what they've done very well is that they optimize AI to understand the best channel to communicate with the customer. And if it's a mobile, if it's on social media, if it's via email or phone, it's more in the power of the consumer versus someone trying to constantly follow up with the client, but just present it in the best possible environment. Brian, do you want to add any examples from your perspective?
Sure. I mean, even the bottom one there, the propensity of lenders and dealers to close a deal, even on the credit adjudication processes, we can actually analyze the back and forth. If you, for the folks on the call or the meeting, a lot of you probably use these systems, whether you're on the dealer side or the lender side, and the notes that go back and forth from either the origination portal or the LOS, or even from the LMS to the LOS. That conversation can be actually analyzed on how, what's the propensity of this deal to actually close. And we've got some really good algorithms on the AI side that actually track that and give you a sense of, hey, if you don't act quickly on this, the negativity inside the conversation would suggest it's not going to close, or the positivity in the conversation would suggest very much that it is going to close. So you can actually focus your efforts on different deals that to optimize really the ones that need attention. And that's where I see a lot of the lenders pushing the AI analytics, is really to get that optimal usage of your funder's time, your buyer's time, and your customer service time. So it works quite well in those systems.
Yeah, so both those trends we discussed so far, you can see the Apple-like experience that customization and optimization of channels is something which it's a key differentiator. Whenever you talk with your clients, if you want to optimize the engagement model and the channel, utilizing best-in-class tools definitely help to keep the consumer engaged, and also to speed up the process. Maybe we'll stop here for a poll question.
So the question there, are you currently using artificial intelligence in some form today? So if you don't know, then that's okay. You can put none at all or some. It's up to you.
During our last session, we talked a little bit about AI as part of the decisioning process and scorecard development. That's what we've seen a lot with companies like Zest AI and Trust Science. basically providing new models to optimize some of the performance of your portfolio. But in this particular case, it could be use of AI in any of the above. It could be on the back end, on the front end, as well as part of analytics.
Yeah, and those numbers on the poll, although we have a bigger subset on our side, if you have any need for results from Inovatec's polls that we do inside of this, that actually matches it, right? So we do see quite a few getting into that arena, but we do see maybe a third or a little higher not getting into it at all, and almost need to know what's available, how they can leverage it. So if you're ever interested in AI, whether it's through Inovatec or somebody else, I encourage you to go take a look at how powerful it is inside some of the systems you may be using today in the industry. Okay. I think we're going to move to trend number 3. And that one is really kind of stemming off the AI discussion. And the trend we've identified is which key areas are lenders now competing in and how are they winning? We talked about some of the marketing strategies and how you originate business. And when we tried to drive this trend out, we actually talked about how are they competing outside of the traditional, let's get some dealers to submit business to us, let's get consumers to submit business to us on the direct side. I think there's a lot of strategies moving in and out there. What this one's going to actually attempt to go through is really on your processes and how you win through automation. So lenders see obviously a tremendous value in automating all the processes. And what we're doing on the Inovatec side is really trying to understand where the big wins are and where even the small wins are and how that kind of all correlates to it. So we do have an end strategy. I think we talked about it on the last call we had, but I just want to give a sense of or just re-describe it so folks can understand it, or for those that weren't there. We have launched and are now in proof of concept and just about to do full launch on our optical character recognition, or OCR for short. And we've started the phase 1 of it, which is really just auto-indexing the documents that come in, which, if you think about it, is a massive lift if you're automating all the documents coming into your funding arenas. So whether it's texted in, it's scanned in, it's let's face it, a lot of dealers still fax in. The system can not only identify the deal jacket, it can also identify which folder it should be in. So proof of income versus a contract, et cetera, and automate that entire process. So if your indexers are using 3 to 10 minutes to index a deal, you can eliminate that time and actually use that person's time for something else, or to help grow on a different area. And then if you keep stemming that through, and I think I talked about this last time, and we're seeing this now as we are approaching our phase 2, is automatically validating the data inside those documents. So whether it's a signature or it's a VIN number or amount of finance, we can automatically validate that data. And data validation is going to be huge for that next step of automating each process. So if you don't have someone eyeballing the document and the system can do it for you, and you've already got an automatic approval, you've got an automatic data or document indexing, and you've actually validated the data on the deal, and you can automatically register the PPSA, why couldn't you automatically fund that deal? And even layer on top of that for some of the subprime lenders, automation of income verification as well. So we've got some great partners out there like Flinks and Inverite and a few others that we're partnering with, where you can do those automation pieces of income. And we're now layering on some products from Equifax that do the validation of where they work and income as well. So I encourage you to reach out to any one of those folks if you're looking at automating those types of processes. But if you put that equation all into one section where you say automatic credit, automatic doc and data validation, automatic PPSA, and automatic income, you have a fully automated funding mechanism. Just like in the old days when credit was automated, it was a big win. So we're seeing that kind of progress. I know we talked about it last time, but we're starting to see it progress. More lenders are getting into the indexing, and then now we're trying to validate what pieces of data that are crucial for funding a deal. And then what we've stemmed off that, or what the feedback we've seen, is actually leading into the LMS side. So when you're servicing a deal, and whatever LMS you use, whether it's a Inovatec or another one, you actually have the ability to automate the payments through commonly used cards. you set up your ledgers to filter the payments properly or filter to the right sections, but you can use an automated mechanism that identifies the commonly used card or a commonly used EFT, and you can actually have that automated as well. So there's a lot of different ways in the process, right from credit all the way to funding, that we're looking at automation as well. So Bob, I don't know if you want to add anything, or if you want to go.
Yeah, just add from a US perspective on the front end of the process, what we've seen, and I think that I mentioned last time as well, we've seen a trend where there are a lot of soft pull done behind the scene, and as part of that frictionless experience online, being able to complete the transaction within 2-3 clicks, and then behind the scene, what's done basically, there's different pins to different systems in near real time, returning all the information which is needed to prefill the application, and consumer provided consent, and basically that's the end of the whole application process. It's been interesting to see that there's more and more authentication prefill at the same time, which on one side reduce the steps required by the consumers, especially when you're on a mobile device. And secondly, there's more fraud solution behind the scenes, which are powered now in that digital environment. Because what we've seen for the last couple of years, there definitely has been an increase in different types of fraud, synthetic fraud being one of those. And some of those solutions, which make life easier for consumers, as well help to reduce the frauds, which dealers and lenders has been exposed to a higher extent in the automotive industry for the last few years.
Yeah, it's a great point, the fraud side as well. Great point.
Okay.
I think we want to lead into another poll question, so take your time, but we have another poll question for you, and it really is around what you're using today. So I'll read it out for those folks that for the recording. So if you're not currently using AI, is it something you're considering over the next 12 to 24 months? Yes, no, or maybe. And this one looks like it's trending the same way we thought it would as well. This one, we always get a resounding yes, but we do have a few folks that are still kind of sitting on the fence or maybe not have a use for it yet. So this one makes sense in terms of it's in line with some other polls we've done.
Yeah, I want to mention that we're publishing next week during the Auto Finance Summit a white paper on automation with various thought leaders in the industry, talking about experience from different parts of the automotive ecosystems, as well as better way how to assess some of that, quantify some of the benefit of AI. So that's
and if anybody's interested in the OCR, the early results on how the indexing is going, because obviously with any new product, it doesn't go 100% perfect all the time. So if anybody's interested in those early results and how it works, please let us know. And that goes for folks that even aren't customers, because the OCR in itself is a trend in the industry. So we could love to share our success and how it's gone, regardless of the systems used.
Well, gentlemen, if I could jump in and continuing on the theme of sharing, as we go into the next trend that each of you are about to highlight, wanted to get into a quick bit of best practices as go into the next trend. What might be some of your suggestions for leveraging your current customer base who might already have a product that your shop offers, but they don't have an auto loan currently? How might a company kind of cultivate its own customer base?
Great question. So let's get into trend number 4, which really addresses that. So capturing new marketplaces. We talked a little bit about the Coast Capital scenario. But what we'll get into here in terms of leveraging your current customer base, and we've seen this now again kind of trend upwards, is really the rise of new refi, we call it, but refinancing current deals. So you can look at, for example, your current customer base. If you have that kind of data to access, it's extremely powerful to understand your customers what they have now with you. If they don't have an auto loan, could you offer them something as a current customer? And if you think about the ease of how to adjudicate that customer, because you have everything on them, you understand their payment history. If they have another product with you, you can easily offer them something that's really better than anything on the street if you wanted to, and understand how to better penetrate that customer. And what we have seen is, especially on the refi circumstance, this is one where it actually may constitute a human touch. So if you have the data and you have an understanding of how you want to engage those customers or current customers, then you may need a human touch in terms of calling them, having to understand what the refinance program is, and the fact that they can offer you, or you can offer something that's more desirable from an auto loan perspective as a current customer. And we've seen this again from a portfolio performance perspective. This is unmatched in terms of how well it does. And at the same time, these are customers you want today, and they're easy to identify if you can tap into that data. The next one, unlimited origination, and that really speaks to that unicorn of a power bar you have now. If you have the right tech base, is you now have the ability to not only tap into any new marketplaces, which is the last bullet there, but also brand it. So if you think about, again, not abandoning any of your current strategies, you have great partners out there that are originating deals for you, you have great dealers out there originating deals for you. But do you have the ability on your technical infrastructure to actually offer different marketplaces quickly? So get up and running within weeks rather than months or big 7-figure bills, and do you have the ability to brand it? So we've recently gone into some great discussions and launched a few in the industry where you can brand your own front end and still leverage that same pipeline. So you're not changing your credit strategy, you're not changing the way you buy, you're just adding a layer on top of a marketplace out there that has your brand on it. Now, that has to be a fairly captive audience, but if you're marketing to a certain segment, or you're looking to say have current customers come into there, a branded offering is really powerful when you're looking to get some customers to use you specifically for a specific reason. And that allows you to get into those new marketplaces. So we wanted to make sure everybody understood that not only just the refi of using your current customers database as per the question, but you can also look at different ways to brand your offering outside of your mainstream indirect. Bob, anything to add on that side?
Yeah, no, just second what you were saying about the speed to add a new marketplace. We've seen for the last couple of years a lot of new portal and new very specific for specific assets marketplaces which have been coming to the market, and especially with the price of the used vehicles and used assets, there've been a lot of new channels to present to consumer the opportunities. We've seen the growth of the peer-to-peer as a channel in some of those assets, and if you're interested to participate in some of those, obviously you should look into a technology stack allowing to plug and play and add those new digital retailing platforms quickly as an option for you to fund and approve and fund, and that's where that speed of being one of those early adopters as a lender, it's something which we've seen a lot of positive feedback from within the market in Canada and US.
Yep. And the one thing I kind of leave the trend number 4 with is we've now got mainstream automotive lenders that have entered into different asset types and different lending environments, because it's super easy to set up, again, on the same technology infrastructure. Consumer loans, non-automotives like power sports, marine, RV, or even get into kind of micro lending as well. So there's a lot of different ways you can grow those marketplaces, and just know that we're not talking just about auto, right? You can still get into different marketplaces based on what your appetite is to do so. And then we no poll question for this one, so we're going to lead right into trend number 5, and I think Bob's going to handle this one. So Bob, I'll throw it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. So the trend number 5, it's all about how gamification is used within the lending space, and um, on the collection side, what I've seen in US is that it's used if you. One example will be with Starbucks. If you have 4 or 5 payments without any delays in subprime auto lending, I've seen examples where a gift card is sent to those consumers. I've seen also really interesting use cases where some additional functionalities are becoming more available for consumers if they agree to share some of their personal data. And as part of the trends in US, the change in the regulations around use of cookies, I think that we'll see more of that gamification approach, more of that. You want to open the next level, then you need to provide additional access to data and allow the clients you deal with, being digital retailing lenders, etc., to have better understanding of who you are as part of the engagement process. If you want better personalization, if you want to have better experience, then you need to provide a little bit additional information, or just you simplify the process for you. And I think that that's a lot of value back to the whole Apple experience, that some consumers love that digital retailing channel because it requires less data to be added from their perspective. But in order to take advantage of that, they need to agree on certain terms and conditions to access behind the scenes all that information. Brian, anything else you want to add from your perspective? Anything you've seen on the Canadian market? I think that that's more US driven by the US, but that whole gamification experience, I feel that is becoming more and more popular in both sides.
Yeah, I think this is one for the Canadian space that we at Inovatec are following very closely in Canada to see where those trends move, and I think the Canadian experience will be much like the US. I think we're all in some way, shape, or form fans of a video game to a certain extent, or at least a lot of us are. But the idea of the experience being kind of baked into this is quite intriguing. We're following this heavily in Canada, and obviously the US will maybe be the leader in that one.
Perfect. Do we have any questions from the audience? I'll just go through our last slide and maybe open for any questions.
And if there's any questions you don't feel or you want to engage here, you can certainly reach out to us separately. I think our information is coming up at the end.
Well, appreciate your time today. And if there's any particular topics or areas you would like to learn more, feel free to suggest those, and we're happy to explore and expand further offline or in a follow-up sessions.
Brian and Bob, excellent presentation. A lot of great trends to ponder and consider and to watch for, to say the least. And just as a reminder, we are recording today's session, so keep watch of your inbox for a message containing a link to it, so you can review the great presentation and share it with your colleagues at your respective company. And as our time winds down, gentlemen, maybe just a couple of quick follow-up questions, just from each of your perspectives. I always like to pose this question, as you referenced during your presentation. AI, artificial intelligence, is such an important component, but how do you define artificial intelligence and its connection to auto finance. How would you define what the tool is, what its capabilities are? Brian, we'll begin with you, and then Bob, your perspectives as well. Just how do you define what artificial intelligence is?
Yeah, I mean, if we could actually define it now, we'd probably be further along. Really, with AI, it's really a matter of understanding what the capabilities are in the technology. Obviously, machine learning plays into that play, but actually understanding how relevant it is at each sequential piece of the lender process, or even the dealer process for that matter. So originating the customer all the way into collections and kind of sunsetting a deal. So for us, it was not necessarily about defining AI. It was more about understanding what our systems could do, and then approaching our lending partners and say, okay, what about AI could actually benefit you in each section of the process? And it very quickly became apparent you could automate processes through it, and the system is smart enough to do things that a human can do, and allow humans to move on and help grow the companies elsewhere. So it was, for us, it wasn't so much about defining AI, it was more about what we were capable of doing and what would be the biggest impact. Bob, I don't know, I'll give it over to you.
Yeah, I think that from my perspective, my definition of AI is basically having an engine which can have a closed loop and improve over time. So you set up the initial parameters of what you want to achieve. This is the if-then scenario, and then you're using a neural network to basically look at all possible combinations, see performance over time, and throughout that experience continue to improve. And I mean, perfect example was that OCR capability, where we started with the ability to scan the documents which are uploaded as part of the particular deal and recognize that something is missing. At the beginning was operating at 70%. Within maybe a month or two, based on looking how the actual people are putting the right documents in the right folders, it basically learned how to be more efficient, and then 2 months later was operating at 90%. And that's exactly how it works. It can recognize that on page 6 it's missing a signature or initials, and it's amazing, and put it in the proper format. So I don't know, Nick, if that answers your question, but for me it's putting the whole concept of the technology capabilities in a very, in some cases, very rudimental processes which we used to do manually, and now we don't have to anymore.
Very good. Again, closing moments here with our experts from Inovatec Systems, Bob Metodiev and Brian Smith, who have gone through their top 5 surprising trends in automotive lending and how they are shaping growth strategies for the modern lender. And one more quick question to round out our session, and Bob, will continue with you, and then Brian have the last word. Kind of along the lines of what you just referenced, Bob. Certainly when a finance company makes an investment in technology or pivots strategy, they want to learn the ROI, the return that they're getting on that investment or strategy change. From your perspective, Bob, and then Brian as well, how quickly should companies measure ROI? How long should strategies kind of germinate and cultivate before measuring? What's been your perspectives in that regard, Bob? We'll continue with you, and then Brian, the last word.
That's a tough question, Nick. It depends will be my answer. So I'll give you 3 different scenarios. If you're looking to incorporate digital retailing strategy, I find that as you're starting the process, what you start with more often will not going to be what you end up with a year after. So being able to adjust and modify and improve over time, it's very important to listen to your clients as you are taking advantage of more consumer-facing strategy, then you need to be flexible. That's from my perspective, that's the key. And from a ROI perspective nowadays, from a pure technology perspective, there's so many API-driven solutions which can give you a very good understanding of the cost versus the profitability early on. So you can make sure that as part of your strategy, you can quantify the benefits within one calendar year. For a larger engagement, then that might be different, but for a pure plug and play through APIs, that's what we've seen as the latest engagement model. That's where you can reap the benefits early on. And some of the examples Brian gave was exactly that. Lenders are trying new things. They don't know, but there's no cost of entry, or it's minimal cost of entry. And therefore, as they try and see how that works within the existing model, they adjust and incorporate it, or decide to abandon and try something new.
Yeah.
Interesting to say the least. Brian, your thoughts as well?
Yeah, so I would do two things. I would recommend a couple things. One is create a baseline, so we can certainly help you with that. Is what are you doing today? How efficient are you? So there's two things. The origination side, what are you originating today? How long does it take you to do that? What are you investing today on those originations, marketing, etc.? And what are you getting from it? So create that baseline, and even on the processes, how long does it take you to credit decision a deal? What types of data are you pulling into the system? Are you paying for it? And to really just understand your cost level of what it takes to adjudicate and fund a deal. And then when you're deciding on the technology to add to get the ROI, really have that partner walk you through it, maybe even help you create baselines, and then understand as you add components, so automatic credit, automatic funding, automatic income verification, you're adding an API to connect a new website, understand with that partner what your ROI should be if you're doing it properly, and then you can kind of measure the efforts you've done on it. So I would highly recommend always creating that baseline. They're never perfect, but create something that you can kind of push off of. And then as you're adding components, your baseline should be very evident that my big gaps are in X, Y, and Z. I would like to explore adding some technology there. And then that'll immediately allow you to understand what companies and partners for technology you should engage based on your need. So that would be my recommendation.
Very good. Great way to leave our presentation today. That's Brian Smith and Bob Metotiev with Inovatec Systems, covering their top 5 surprising trends in automotive lending and how they're shaping growth strategies for the modern lender. Bob, Brian, thank you so much for the excellent presentation and intriguing thoughts to consider for finance companies of all sizes. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And on behalf of all of us at Cherokee Media Group, we thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having you again next time.